Hi, Lenny Sharp, Sharp Mountain Homes Team, eXp Realty. I just want to walk you through the home buying process. So I thought it might be valuable to step through all the phases of the home buying process and highlight a few things. I will be preparing, and I have prepared some other videos that cover some of this in detail. If you're searching for a vacation rental here in the Yosemite area, of course, you have to actually locate and purchase a house. It really does begin with some research. So we'll take a look at available listings and I will share those with you, and you will share the houses that catch your eye with me. And I'll do my best to speak to the listing agent and try to understand perhaps some of the seller's motivation. Why are they selling? Get a sense of where we need to come in if we make an offer. But again, we're gonna create a list and we're gonna go through that list together and determine which properties make the most sense. We'll also do some analysis. Typically I use AirDNA as my primary tool to estimate revenue, which of course is important whether you're going to be doing this as a full-time investment or even if you're going to use the house a lot as your second home and you just want to Airbnb when you're not using it. So we'll go through that process and we'll develop a list and kind of whittle that down to the most likely candidates. Now along the way, most likely you're in another area, maybe LA, maybe the Bay Area, and you're not familiar or available to go see the homes yourself. So I will do video preview. So you probably have seen, if you've looked at my channel or watched my channel or my other videos, I'll highlight specific potential investments and walk through the home, give you a sense of, the lot, the setting, the views, the parking. I'll actually walk through and speak to specific issues that I notice that might affect either desirability as a short-term rental, or they may be issues related to regulations. Mariposa County in particular is pretty strict, and the process to get your vacation rental or TOT permit is pretty extensive. And we can head off some of those issues before we get to the offer stage or get into contract. So that's the preliminary view. Now, depending on whether you're going to self-manage or use a third-party manager, I also have somebody on my team, Kyle Collette, who manages, I don't know what the number is now, probably pushing 90 vacation rentals. But the two areas that he services are Fresno, Clovis, as well as the mountain communities of Oakhurst, Mariposa, etc. So if you're going to utilize Kyle's services or just considering third-party management, Kyle will also get involved. We can bring him into the equation to do a little deeper analysis on the ROI potential. Because he has such a strong lineup of vacation rental properties that he manages, rather than just relying on AirDNA data, which is, like I said, generally quite good. Sometimes there can be some inaccuracies because the data that they're getting from Airbnb and VRBO possibly isn't 100% accurate. So we always look at the specific comps. We don't just take the AirDNA number at face value. But even doing that, there are potential for error and inaccuracy. And because Kyle has so many properties under management, sometimes they could be in the same area or very equivalent from a bedroom, bathroom, guest count. He can do a more detailed analysis, and he will also go into the ROI, including expenses. Again, he's got good data on his own listings that he manages, and we can use that to take the revenue and ROI analysis to the next level. So we'll do that if you choose to go that route. And then typically you'll make a plan and we'll go see your short list of properties in person. So at that point, and again, we can do this anywhere along the process, but sometime between introduction and property identification and actually seeing the property, then we have to have a buyer-broker agreement. There have been some changes in real estate law. There was a lawsuit settled by the National Association of Realtors last July, and everything changed. So even though commissions were always negotiable, the way it worked before, the listing agent would determine with the seller what they would make in terms of commission and also what they would offer the buyer's agent. So in this case, I'm working on the buyer's side, but unlike the past where I could literally look at the MLS and see what commission the seller was willing to pay, now that is negotiable. They can say whether they're willing to accept concessions, which is the word for the commissions paid to the buyer's agent. We don't know what that number is, so it's all part of the negotiation. So the interesting thing though is we can ask for the seller to pay commission when we make our offer, and we always do. But the commission that we ask the seller to pay cannot be more than the commission that the buyer has agreed to pay their agent. You and I have to have an agreement, and I'm going to send you an agreement at 3%, and then we're going to ask the seller to pay that 3%. So that is how it works. And we have to have that agreement in place before I can show you property. Now, you might ask, and again, I wasn't sure if I was going to go into this much detail, but this is an important topic. You might ask, what if the seller's not willing to pay any commission, or the seller's only willing to pay 2% or 2.5% or 1.5%? So we don't know what that's going to be. Again, it's going to be part of the negotiation. They might counter, we might counter, but the reality is you will have made a commitment to pay me 3%. And I'm going to do my best to get you the very best price and the very best conditions on the offer, including the seller paying all or at least the lion's share of my commission so it doesn't come out of your pocket. But again, I found that I add tremendous value for my clients. Once we begin talking, I'm probably going to end up previewing, if I haven't already done it, several properties, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 properties before you even make the trip up the mountain. Because I'm adding that value up front, and then I'm going to add value through the process of making the offer and hopefully getting it into escrow. And you might have some questions about renovations or remodeling that has to be done, and I've got contacts for contractors and other service providers. So I'm going to handle all that while you're still back at home. So that's part of it, and we'll go into, as we talk about some of the other processes, what else I do. I'm just walking around my property today. Anyway, we look at some properties, we have a short list. Ideally you come up and we narrow that down and you identify a property and we make an offer. Now, I think it's important that as we go through the offer process, you really think in terms of what are your goals, and your goals should be some combination of finding the right house that you'd like to stay in when it's not rented, and finding the right house that's going to generate the right kind of return when you do rent it on one of the platforms. So you're looking for return on investment, and you're looking for the home that you want to use yourself. Now, hopefully what you're not looking for is to win some sort of contest, because while there is negotiation, it's not a contest. It's a matter of both sides getting what they want. And if you're focused on getting the right house at the right price that can return the right level of investment based on your goals, then that's good. And it's not a matter of you losing out to a seller who's not willing to make some concession. It's what are your objectives and can we meet them? So that's what we'll be focused on. So we make the offer. Most cases there's a counter. And like I said, they may counter on the commission, they may counter on the price, they may counter on some of the other terms, but it might go back and forth a few times. Seller counter offer, buyer counter offer, seller counter offer, buyer counter offer. It happens, and hopefully we come to a set of terms and conditions and price that everybody agrees to. And we're also going to, in that process, through the offer, we're going to ask for a close of escrow period. Typically 30 days is quite normal. So basically 30 days escrow and 17 days for all the investigation and the removal of contingencies. So what are your contingencies? Investigation of the property. So that's basically all the inspections, including your own personal inspection of the property, and the appraisal, the loan, insurance. Those are the key ones. And the standard is 17 days, and that's usually sufficient. I have all the inspectors that I use that have been, like I said, outstanding in delivering very robust inspections and a willingness to speak with the clients and explain anything that they don't understand. So that's part of the process. I do have a couple of videos on home inspection and pest inspection. They're part of establish the condition of the property. From the home inspection, you're going to find some areas that you've got to pay attention to, and you might find some things that need to be replaced. So one example is it might have an electrical panel that is from a manufacturer that's not reliable, that's a hazard or dangerous in fact. If we discover that in the home inspection, then of course that's going to be given to a contractor so that we can ask for that as part of the request for repairs. And there might be other things. So they may notice some issues with the deck or some other construction related issue. And what we do is we take all the data. So we've got the home inspection and we've got the pest inspection. Now the pest inspector will also give us an estimate for repairs to correct anything he finds. Septic inspection and well inspection. Not every house has a well, but generally speaking, there's going to be a private, possibly a shared well. But we have to understand what is the production in terms of gallons per minute. Is that sufficient for the house? What's the septic condition, and is that acceptable for the house? And again, if it's Mariposa County, they have some special, more strict requirements. So they're going to literally tell you what the capacity of the house is for your vacation rental permit based on the septic system, in addition to any other limitations or restrictions they have. Septic will weigh into that. We're going to gather up all the reports, get all the data, determine what it's going to take to make the house right. And again, as a vacation rental, you might have some stricter requirements that aren't necessarily a factor if you were just going to live in the house. And then we're going to submit a request for repairs. Typically, that's going to be in the form of a credit back at close of escrow, because you don't want to have to come out of pocket to pay for these repairs because you've got your loan based on the loan value. Typically, we'll ask for a credit. Now, every loan has a limitation in terms of what percentage of the purchase price will they allow you to get a credit back, and that can be 2%, it could be 3%, could be as high as 6%, but we've got to take that into account. And so let's say that the repairs required actually exceed the credit that you're allowed. Of course, you could choose to take that in the form of a price reduction But the most practical way to handle that, again, from a cash flow perspective and initial investment perspective, would be to have the vendors paid directly. If it's the pest inspection company or the contractor that you got an estimate from, we would just simply put in the request for repairs that those vendors would be paid those amounts at close of escrow. So go through that process. We get to the point where, and again, if you submit your request for repairs and they agree, basically you are now removing your investigation of the property contingency. So that's kind of part of the deal. If they're going to agree to do it, whether it's a credit or a repair prior to close of escrow or a payment to a vendor, then you're essentially removing that contingency. Now, I skipped over it, but when you make your offer, you have to put an earnest money deposit. Now that earnest money deposit can be as little as 1% and it can go as high as 3%. And if you've got the cash flow to support it, then I always recommend 3% as a earnest money deposit. It makes your offer look stronger, and the reality is it's not costing you or risking anything, because until you remove the contingency, so nothing happens automatically, you are able to get 100% of your deposit back. It's just a way to make your offer appear stronger, even though you're not actually risking anything. One other point on the offer I'll just mention, there is a place to select whether you want a home warranty. Now, in a lot of locations, a home warranty may be a great thing. I personally have found that in the mountains here, they don't have a lot of value. So if you opt for a home warranty, then you would also indicate how much the seller would be committed to pay. Again, it's totally up to you, but I find that the warranty companies have to use their own service providers, and sometimes those service providers don't want to come to the mountains. It's of negligible value, and it does add one more wrinkle to the offer, and if you waive it, it just makes it cleaner. I should also mention that as we get into the inspections, the buyer is typically going to pay for those. Now, there can be exceptions, and again, everything is negotiable, but standard practice here is that there are unlikely to be any inspections that have been done. So I know in other areas, Bay Area, for example, a lot of listing agents will have their seller do the inspections ahead of time and have all those ready. Just really isn't the practice up here. Typically the buyer's going to pay for the inspection. Those vary from supplier to supplier, but you can think in terms of probably about $1,500, maybe $2,000 max for home, pest, well, and septic. And that's something that you typically will pay the provider directly. In some cases, you can actually arrange that to be paid out of escrow, but again, I think it's a little cleaner to just pay them up front. So anyway, we get through all of that, and we've done our due diligence, and you've got your appraisal, and it came in at value, and you've got your insurance, and I've got a great insurance broker up here that I'm happy to refer to you. They're going to ask for photos of the property, all four sides, and the address sign. And many times I'm the one that goes out there and does it. I'm also going to meet all the inspectors at the house and give them access. This is part of what I do to shepherd this transaction through to conclusion. And if everything goes well, then we get to the end and you close escrow and you own your house. And then I'm gone. You never hear from me again, right? Of course not. No, then I continue to serve you in whatever way I can, practically. In some cases, there may be inspections for the vacation rental process that have to take place. I know I'm servicing out-of-area buyers. You're not here. It's difficult to get up. You can't run up here every day, particularly during the week. I'm local, And I feel like it's, again, my honor to continue to serve you after the close of escrow. I'll help you in any way I can. You're probably also going to need, for your vacation rental operation, a cleaner, a handyman, the contractor we talked about. I'll do my best to connect you with certainly all my contacts. I have relationships with all those folks that help you maintain and manage and really succeed at your short-term rental business. So anyway, that was pretty long, walk through all the steps. Hopefully that's helpful. Please reach out and contact me if you have any questions. And if you would like help in finding that perfect property up here near Yosemite that can be a successful vacation rental and hopefully a beautiful place for you and your family and friends to hang out when it's not rented, just let me know and I'm happy to help you. Oh, here's a little of my view. Anyway, thanks.